welcome back. I hope you all are enjoying our journey together on qualitative research and learning a lot from what I'm sharing in different videos. If you remember, in our previous video, we talked about sampling strategy in qualitative research, and we talked some of those strategies, including purposeful sampling, convenience sampling. We also talked about chain sampling or snowball sampling. Today, we will continue our conversation in this regard, and we will learn some more strategies of doing sampling in qualitative research. So let's talk about today. I want to talk about a sampling strategy which is called stratified purposive, PUR sampling. Stratified purposive sampling. In this strategy, what you do as a researcher, you first identify the strata which may be included in a phenomenon that you are interested to study. And once you identify the different strata, and then you do purposive sampling in each strata. So the first thing is to find out what are different strata in your sample, and then you do convenience sampling for each strata. Let's understand this with an example. Let's say I want to understand, let's say there is a school where a new curriculum, school district where a new curriculum is being implemented. And as a researcher, I want to understand, explore the experiences of teachers in schools regarding this new curriculum which has been implemented. So what could be a possible strata in this case is the teachers. And so what I could do, I can divide it in three, let's say elementary, middle, and high. So three strata: elementary school, middle school, high school. And then I can interview, I can do purposive sampling here, in each strata, and recruit participant and do interviews. So that's one thing to keep in mind in this strategy. You first identify, and from the total population that you want to study, you identify the strata, and then for each strata you do purposive sampling, and that's why it is called stratified purposive sampling. So that's another strategy that a researcher can use in qualitative research based on their research purpose and their research question. Another strategy which is used in qualitative research, it is called theoretical sampling. This strategy is only used in one qualitative tradition, which is grounded theory. So this is not used in any other approaches of conducting qualitative research, such as phenomenology, case study, or ethnography, or narrative inquiry. We don't use it there. We only use it in grounded theory. And this concept of theoretical saturation or theoretical sampling is unique to grounded theory. If you remember in our previous video when we were talking about what is grounded theory methodology, so just let's do a brief recap. So what we do in grounded theory is a suitable methodology which is used when I want to understand a social process and want to develop a theory or a framework related to a phenomenon, a social phenomenon that I want to understand. So grounded theory is used in when a researcher wants to develop a social process, develop a theory or framework in related to the phenomenon that they are interested to study. So what happens in grounded theory? You start with your data collection where you, let's say you interview first participant, then you interview, let's say, second participant, and let's say third participant. So what you do these interviews, you collect the data, and based on the initial data, let's say you did another interview, fourth, and based on these initial data, you develop a tentative framework. Tentative framework or a tentative theory. And let me take a hypothetical example. So let's say you are developing a framework. There's just hypothetical variable A, factor B, C, D, let's say, and then let's say F here. So let's say you are developing a social process, a framework, and then what you do based on your initial data, initial first few interviews, you develop a tentative framework. Now what do? These are your various categories. Now for each category, you have a tentative theory based on your initial interviews. Now based on your initial categories or the framework which is emerging from the data, now the further interviews or further participant that you seek is decided by the categories which are emerging here, the variables, the factors, the framework which is emerging here. So let's say I want to understand more about this particular framework or this particular variable here. So I will, when I'm doing the further recruitment, further sampling, I'm keeping this variable in mind and exploring more when I'm doing further interviews. If I want to develop this particular category or this particular category, in my further interviews, in my further sampling, further recruitment, I'm keeping these variables in mind so that I could develop this more. I could develop these categories even more. And that is why the name comes from theoretical sampling, because you start with an initial pool of participant, and this initial pool of participant helps you develop your tentative theory. And then the further sampling you do to develop and refine that theory even further. And that sampling that you do after the initial sampling is called theoretical sampling. And the name itself suggests, because theoretical sampling is, this sampling helps you to develop and refine the framework, the theory that you have been developing. So theoretical sampling is used in grounded theory to refine and develop the categories, the tentative categories or the framework or the theory which is emerging from the data. Now let's talk about another approach of sampling in qualitative research, and that is called maximum variation. Maximum variation is sort of, I don't call it a sampling strategy, but more sort of a strategy to collect more rich and thick data, more in-depth data related to a phenomenon that I am investigating. So this strategy, we call it maximum variation. Maximum variation. So this strategy, what you do is you start when you decide your population that you want to study, and then you uh, decide, okay, I want to study, let's say, uh, women, black novice women faculty members in academia. So what you do when you start your sampling process, you are selecting participant for your study, and then at the same time you are mindful of having a diverse set of people, participants in your study. So try to do more diversity within the sample that you want to collect. So let's say I'm doing, let's say, a phenomenological study where I'm planning to, let's say, somewhere between 7 to 12 participant for my study. So when I'm recruiting participant for my study, I can achieve maximum variation within this pool of participant. And what I could do, I can use some demographic strategy, demographic variables. Based on demography, I can achieve more variation within that pool. So what I could do in these number of participants, 7 to 12, I can have some, let's say, based on gender. So I can achieve some variation based on gender, based on race, based on maybe experience, maybe some other criteria. So you try to achieve more variation within your sample. So let's say if I remember one study which I did where I wanted to understand um, therapist experiences of empathy and compassion in their practice, in their therapeutic interaction with their client. So when I was shortlisting, selecting participant for my study, I was using purposive sampling. But within that sampling, I try to have maximum variation. So what I did, I selected some participants, some therapists who were male and some female therapists. Based on race, so I selected some participant who were male and let's say white, others let's say black therapist, uh, and some Hispanic. Based on experience also, so I had some participants who were like experienced somewhere between 0 to 5 years, some were like between 6 to 10 years, some therapists between 11 to 15 years, and some therapists who were like above 15 years of experience. So what I did, I tried to achieve maximum variation within the pool of participants that I recruited for my study based on gender, race, experience. So these are some ideas of how a researcher can achieve variation within the pool, within the participant that they are planning to recruit and interview and collect data from them. And this is not only limited to gender, race, or experience. Based on what you want to, what phenomenon you are interested to explore, you can think about what might be some possible ways to achieve maximum variation within the pool of participant that you are recruiting. So that's briefly about these three strategies that we as qualitative researcher use stratified purposive sampling, theoretical sampling, and maximum variation. That's it for today. I hope you have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you again with another video on qualitative research. Thank you.